Good evening, Des Moines, Iowa, and the world. This is the Doc and Lefty program coming to you from the webcast1live.com studios in lovely, I just said it, downtown Des Moines. I am Lefty, and as always, we are bringing you the perspectives you love from the sides you hate. And sitting across the table, looking spiffier than Spiffy McSpifferton at a Spiffington contest, Dr. Patrick Petrosh. Doc, how is it going?
It's going well. How long did you spend on that particular opening?
This one just
seconds,
now, top of the dome, man.
Top of the
always,
dome? All right.
Always.
Well, because it sounds like, I do have that Ben Franklin thing going on,
yeah,
don't I, man?
You absolutely do. You look like a large collection of $100.
You don't look like
green and wrinkled.
And not like the conservative on the show.
No,
never.
Ed says that all the time. Ed will invite, and all his liberal friends are really nice, and he says, well, no, Houghton, he's a conservative Republican. And then they're like, what? Well, we can't talk to you now.
No, you can't. So, we do that on purpose because I come to the conservative things looking all snazzed up, and people, but see, that's the thing about conservatives, they can smell it on me. Oh yeah. They don't like even getting close to me.
Oh yeah, because that
I don't
smell
shower.
just permeates everything.
I don't shower either though, and that's always been a problem.
Well, if you're a hippie, what else? I mean,
well, that's true.
You're just trying to save water.
That's
how'd your gig go this last weekend?
Oh, it was pretty good. I got to say, I had and folks, we got a couple of guests here in the studio.
We do.
And we also want to talk about what we're going to do for
real
the show.
Guests, not just ones we make up in our head.
Right. We're gonna get to that in a second. We're also gonna tell and drop a big bombshell on the audience that we're going long tonight, and I'll get to that in a second. But no, the gig was funny because I actually had some. It was always fun to play there, but at Ducktail, but there were. Early on in the show, not a lot of folks at the bar. They kind of they came in a little bit later, and so my plan had been, I know there's going to be like 10 people there early on, right? So I'm just going to play some of my own original material, just because whatever. I'm just going to work on a couple of things for myself and not care too much about playing covers and things that other people want to hear. And I gotta say that throughout the night, throwing those original tunes in, I got more of a response from them, which is a weird coincidence. Not to pat myself on the back for it, but I thought that was cool.
Because you never do that.
I thought that was pretty cool. Well, not about my music, man. But the funniest part of the night was at the end. I was playing a really laid back version of Wagon Wheel, just like really chilled out. Let's all sit on the couch and relax over the sounds of a young lady screaming at the top of her lungs at these even younger men who had offended her in a very serious way as she stormed out of the bar, and that was a pretty fun way to end the show while I'm just like really laid back music to screaming arguments, and that's how it went.
Well, the one time when we came down to see you over, I can't remember where it was, but there was a couple of screamers in the back there too.
Yes. So, there were. This wasn't this was not the kind of screaming that you necessarily want to have.
All right.
This was the different kind.
Combat screaming.
This was, we're going to have an issue.
Well.
Yeah.
Well,
and these guys deserved it. I heard the story. They definitely deserved it.
Now that you've had your time to tell you about your weekend, let me tell you about my day-to-day.
Well, you asked me, though. Don't put that on me. You asked me about my weekend. I was about to ask you about yours.
Well, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to skip my weekend, which was good, nice and relaxing, and talk about the thing that infuriated me today. Iowa has passed a 43% increase in its gas tax. They managed to do this, the Republicans, against significant opposition, and had to remove people from the Ways and Means Committee to get it done.
Well, one guy.
Right? No, Zach Nunn and Jay Keifield. They had to remove two. Oh. And the bottom line is, when we came up with pro-life issues, they didn't remove the blocks to that in the markup committees, but they could with this. So in a space of 4 days, we got ourselves a gas tax hike. Anybody here know of any legislation that's moved through Iowa quicker than this gas tax hike? No.
We like orange barrels.
Yes. Well, and this should be able to provide many more orange barrels. Yeah, because I like to use them for target practice as I'm zipping down the road. You sideswipe them every once in a while. But the bottom line is honest. The question I'm asking myself, and I got visited by a couple of heavyweights yesterday from the Republican Party, and the bottom line is, I asked them, well, where do you stand on it? Both the heavyweights said, we think it's great. We like raising taxes. In particular, we like raising the most regressive tax we can. Honest to goodness, what did I get out of voting for Republicans this last go around? Really, what did I get out of it? I would have had a better audience. People would have listened to me more had I supported the Democratic Party, because there were a lot of senators that didn't like the gas tax because it's so regressive. Mm-hmm. I would have had a better audience, and they would have listened to me more than my own party that I have supported my entire life, led by a governor that I've known since I was 13.
It's a weird day.
Yeah, that is disappointing and sad, especially since majority of the resistance did come from the Republican Party, joined by Democrats. There is a bipartisan issue about, let's just not pass this, and there were plenty of other good ideas. Anyway, that's my major conundrum for today is, what do I do and call myself as a Republican from now on? Do I keep that moniker?
I think that you just kind of wave the white flag and get out of politics altogether.
Well, I can't do that. What fun would that be? I mean, if I can't gadfly the Republicans, then I have to go gadfly the Democrats.
Yeah, we don't need that kind of aggravation.
Yeah, because you guys get mean.
Yeah, well,
you guys have union thugs come after me.
Well,
it could. Well, we have two great guests in the audience, not in the audience, in the studio today. They actually showed up. I'm actually really impressed that at least one of them showed up. Rabbi David Kaufman. We're excited to have him here.
The
first time he's here.
This is Rabbi, strap in. This is how it goes.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, great. Right up there. Temple B'nai Jeshurun, right?
Jeshurun, yes.
Whew. Boy, I got that one good. And then Chrisjahn Beck from the ISU Atheist and Agnostic Society.
Correct.
And so we're glad to have them both here.
Yeah.
Our topic tonight is going to be very uplifting.
Yes.
Ungodly so.
I can't.
No pun intended there.
Yeah, no pun intended. And we're going to be talking about ISIS all night long.
And how long are we doing it?
We're doing it for 2 hours.
Yeah.
2 long ones. So people, get your drink, strap in, make sure your popcorn's made. Is going to be entertaining.
And I got it. Well, I hope not. I hope it's more informative than entertaining, because there's nothing entertaining about these ISIS folks. But I got to say this. You and I were talking about this last week, thinking about how we're going to do the show and who we were going to have come on. And you suggested the Rabbi, who I've never met. Nice to meet you, Rabbi. Thank you for being here. But I couldn't think of anybody else that I wanted to spend 2 hours talking about it, because Christian, I got to say, out of all of our guests, now I love all of our guests that we have, all of them, and you've now been on 4 times.
Yep.
Which is getting up into super friend, you get a tote bag and a mug territory.
Fantastic.
If we had those things,
if we had it in the budget, you would get those things.
You would get something like that. But there are very few guests who I have the personal experience of after you come on thinking we need more time to talk about this. So when we thought about, let's do a ISIS only show, and I thought I was like, well, we should probably have Chrisjahn on to talk about it. We're going to need more than just an hour. That was my thought process. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the threat. We're going to talk about the thing that is the Islamic State, where it came from, how it sort of came to be. We're going to talk about the American response, what the threat means to the United States of America, the political ramifications, and then, because I did reach out to, and I'm going to expose this, what I seem to be a weakness in the show tonight. I did reach out to a professor of politics who studies Islam. Hey, and we got 2 hours, man. We'll get those breaks in.
Yeah, we still have to be on time.
I know. Well, I'm going to ask you this: what about we expand those so we're going 20 minutes instead of 10?
Nah, I need the breaks.
Okay, so I reached out to a professor of politics, Drake, who studies Islamic issues, and he was not able to make it tonight. We do not have a specific Islamic voice on the show, which we tried to figure that out.
We both reached out,
and we weren't able to. And because of the time frame, the Rabbi and Chrisjahn, who were kind enough to be here, and Rabbi, I think that you might be here for just the first hour, if I had that correct, which we do appreciate having you here. And so I'm going to with respect to the moderating role that I have, I'm also going to be posing and trying to sort of be that, at least an advocate for the Islamic voice, if not a very uneducated, poorly educated one. But we don't have that here. And I think it's fair to mention that we need one to have a complete
I can do
discussion.
some of that too.
Okay,
I've had a few of these conversations.
Right after this break, we got special guests, Rabbi David Kaufman and Chrisjahn Beck. We want to thank all of our sponsors, Bertroshan Associates at BertroshanAssociates.com, LubinusLawFirm.com, Halo Capital, Des Moines Interest Rates.com, Des Moines Anesthesia PC at 515-574-6442. They do a lot of anesthesia, and pain management. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and don't forget to check us out on DocandLefty.com. We'll be back right after this break.
Bertroshan Associates, how can I help you?
Bertroshan Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertrosh, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're doing ISIS for 2 hours, partly because it is the singular sort of bad guy that the United States of America has now that has captured our imaginations even more so than the Syrian opposition, the rebellion there, even more so than the resurgence of a nasty Russia. ISIS has really captured the American imagination. And so even though I don't necessarily think, and we'll get into this later in the show, that ISIS poses a specific present danger to the American population, it certainly does deserve 2 hours of us talking about it. So we're here with Rabbi David Kaufman and Chrisjahn Beck, president of the Iowa State Atheist Agnostic Society. And gentlemen, I'd like to hear, Rabbi, especially from you first. I mean, is this something that you are talking about a lot in your community? Is this something that and by something I mean ISIS in general, or maybe ISIS in particular, terrorism in general? Is this something that, how does this affect you specifically in your community here in Des Moines?
Well, terrorism in general and the specifics of what ISIS supporters have done in Europe specifically lately has been a big problem. What we found in both the Paris attack and in Copenhagen is that ISIS supporters attacked secular institutions that were dealing with freedom of speech first and then went right after Jewish institutions. And that the pattern was that way, one and then the other. So there's concern that kind of pattern could continue in other places in the world, including the United States. It's a very simple matter for a lone wolf attacker, as they say, to just duplicate something like that, particularly in the United States, where you have available guns and all kinds of other things. And we also have a serious problem in that there are a lot of people who have gone off and served in, whether they're fighting for ISIS in another country, or they've fought for another radical organization like Al-Shabaab, which is why there's concerns in Minneapolis about the Somali community there, and potentially having attacks on the Mall of America or other shopping malls, duplicating attacks that have taken place in Kenya. So the Jewish community always pays attention to threats. The threat level right now is higher simply because the ISIS, or people connected to ISIS, or people who are trying to participate from afar in what they're doing, seem to be willing to act on their own and just go and do things. And that's a significant problem.
There's been tension, to put it mildly, between folks of the Islamic faith and folks of the Jewish faith for an awfully long time. Do you see this as markedly different? Have you sensed a tonal shift in this, or because you point out secular institutions and Jewish institutions? What's different with ISIS?
Well, I mean, one of the things I would say, and it depends on, you're talking about tension between Jews and Muslims. That's not so much in the United States. I do a lot of work with Muslims from all over the place. I work with Muslims from Sudan. In fact, I just had a meeting with a Muslim professor from Bosnia the other day talking about these issues. The primary target right now of ISIS are Muslims. Essentially what ISIS is trying to do is ISIS is trying to advocate for a certain kind of Islam against everybody else. And their particular target, more than anything, are people who support nationalism and support the dictatorial regimes, but also who support basically secular Islam of different kinds. And it's really kind of a puritanical movement. The Jewish community, I think, to a certain extent, is trying to be supportive where it can of the American Muslim community in responding to charges that all Muslims are like ISIS, which they're really not all like ISIS. The vast majority are nothing like ISIS. In fact, one of the people I spoke to recently said we shouldn't be calling them Islamists, we should be calling them Arabists, because they're really just Arab army, marching around. But I also work a lot with moderate Muslims who are trying to be reformers. And what they say is we have to call this stuff what it is. It's based in Islam. It's medieval Islam. If you look back at the people who took over Spain in the 11th, 12th century, the Almoravids and the Almohads, those are the people who they're copying right now. And you had Muslims fleeing Spain along with the Jews to get away from them. The idea that there are two different ideas we need to be concerned with. One is that these people, the idea that these people have nothing to do with Islam is wrong. They're following an Islam that's simply not practiced by modern people. That's the reality. And they're using teachings that have been long rejected by the vast majority of Muslims. But at the same time, if we don't understand that these people are religiously motivated, and they're not simply motivated by money and resources, we're going to have a difficult time counteracting them.
Chrisjahn.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me back on. I appreciate it. Sorry for those of you guys who are listening. I'm getting over a cold. Hopefully it's not too rough to listen to. I think the rabbi makes a lot of good points. In fact, I pretty much agree with him across the board. I think it's important getting into this discussion that we draw some distinctions here because it's really easy to conflate Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And that's problematic to do because there is a tremendous amount of tension between the two. One is not simply an offshoot of the other.
Well, fair enough, but I think that the Islamic State, what was called the Islamic State in Iraq, was born out of Al-Qaeda leaving Iraq. I don't mean an offshoot as in they are in lockstep and this is like Al-Qaeda on speed or something. They come from the same sort of.
So, we'll get back to that, the difference between Al-Qaeda and where the ISIS came from, and what really, because it's ISIS, ISIL, and it would be nice for our listeners to know.
Or Daesh.
What?
Or Daesh, which is the term the Arabs use.
So, it'd be nice to kind of define what all that means. But we'll get back to that right after this break. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We have Rabbi David Kaufman from Temple B'nai Jeshurun. Did that right? Whew. And Chrisjahn Beck. Yeah, you bet. We'll be back right after this break.
Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places, especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's Amco on Hickman Road in front of Kmart, and it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give Amco on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. We're here with our guests, Rabbi David Kaufman, Chrisjahn Beck from Iowa State Atheist Agnostic Society. We're talking about ISIS. We're dropping stuff on the floor. We're having a good time. So we were making a distinction before the break about the differences between Al-Qaeda and ISIS. The point I wanted to make is that ISIS is not some new thing that appeared out of whole cloth. That right. I understand that one is not the other, and that they don't. And Al-Qaeda has disavowed early on a lot of the tactics that ISIS was using. But I think that it's important to recognize that there are links between the two that link back, that have sort of their feelers in U.S. foreign policy.
And Al-Qaeda in Iraq specifically.
Exactly. In the region, dating back several years. So, Rabbi, if you want to respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's really important to understand is that ISIS has among its military leaders former Saddam Hussein generals. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are not people who have no organizational ability, who've been working in groups of 4 or 5 people in small cells somewhere. These are people who know how to run armies. They know how to procure weapons. They know how to sell things to raise money. They have very advanced leadership, and they're trying to operate a state. Al-Qaeda never had the desire to operate a state. And in fact, Al-Qaeda operates primarily kind of in secret, without taking claim for a lot of things. And ISIS is operating completely differently to that. ISIS is opposed to the leadership of Ayman al-Zawahiri, who's the leader of the functional leader of Al-Qaeda now. And they basically saw Zarqawi and a few others in Yemen as along with the people in Iraq as the people they wanted to look to for how to function. And so functionally what's happened is, because ISIS has been very successful in building this state, they've drawn a lot of the people away from Al-Qaeda. They're actually drawing, there was a report today that they're drawing people away from the Taliban. Because people are seeing this as basically a Sunni, the Sunni militant organization that's actually going to work. And their success in Libya is a big problem. And they're also looking at what's functionally an Iranian hegemony and responding to that. They're seeing the Shia are their primary enemy. Right. And so the fact that they're seeing the Shia take control in a lot of different places is part of what's allowing them to recruit support.
So let me ask...
Well, let me bust in here. What effect do you think them declaring a caliphate over there, do you think that has drawn Muslims in? Because they've declared that it's the caliphate. And apparently the guy who's leading ISIS momentarily is from the tribe of Muhammad. So I don't know, what's your take on that?
It's propaganda, and it's been successful in a number of places. Now, is it the primary driver for all these people? I don't think so. I think there may be people who want to come help fight for an Islamic state. Basically, their term in English is the same as caliphate. That's what it is. The Islamic State is a caliphate. And there has been a desire for a long period of time among some people in the Sunni community, particularly, to try to reestablish, how do I say this, Muslim honor, particularly Arab Muslim honor. This is not something that's going on outside the Arab world in North Africa for the most part. It's primarily those areas, and these are the areas that used to have a caliphate. And the Ottoman Empire is seen by a lot of people in the region as being the high point of what they aspire to create. And it's been a long time, and they see both secular Muslim leaders who are nationalist and the West as the enemy of that.
All right. So, and you said that their expansion into Libya is going to be a disaster. Can you explain more for our audience why that would be terrible?
Well, because if you think about the reality that we face in Africa is that Americans really don't care about Africa. I've dealt with Sudan for so long. We've had genocide, 3 genocides in Sudan and a genocide in Rwanda. Did anybody even notice that the Central African Republic, which was a Christian-led government supported by France, was taken over by Muslim insurgents? Americans really don't care. And the problem is, unless and the Europeans seem incapable of doing anything to stop just about anything in France, in Africa. France tried to help in Mali, but the reality is when you have militant armies operating in Africa, for the most part, we leave them alone unless they're controlling oil or they have nuclear weapons. And anybody who has neither one of those things can just grow in size and grow in size and grow in size. We could see a very large ISIS operation in North Africa very quickly.
All right. Well, let me. I'm going to bust in here for a second. One of the things that I know from having a little bit of a military background, one of the things that I look at when I see them expanding into Libya, we fought a war way back when we were a young nation over there against the Barbary Coast pirates, and they were Muslim at the time. And what happens if ISIS is able to take over some ports and some ships, and honest to goodness, the Russians are in a better position to fight them in the Mediterranean than we are. I mean, we're really a skeleton crew over there. So for me, I start thinking about what's going to happen to the shipping lanes over there if they have access to the Mediterranean. I'm just going to say that. Now, you had a couple of questions there. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well, no, that's okay. And I was just going to see, because Chrisjahn, the rabbi, mentioned a couple of things about losing or recruiting folks from the Taliban and from Al Qaeda, and I'm wondering what your thoughts on the consolidation. If the myriad of threats that are out there seem to, or could not seem, but if there's potential for the myriad of threats out there to sort of drain into ISIS, does that make ISIS easier to tackle as a centralized thing, or does it just give them more power, makes them harder in the long run?
Well, it does a number of things. I think it's some of both of those things. I think one of the things that's important to do to draw a distinction, though, is to point out that the establishment of a caliphate and of a caliph is very different than what Al Qaeda has sought, which the rabbi alluded to. If the two were to join forces, it would be really, really bad. Really bad. At this point, that doesn't seem likely because there's a tremendous amount of tension. A lot of this is being driven by propaganda, but there is a call within the Quran when there is a recognized, established caliphate that if it is at all within the possibility of Muslims throughout the world to live there, they are called to do that.
Is there any kind of authority?
The caliph.
Well, no. What I mean is, I could say that I have a recognized caliphate here in the studio.
Sure.
And Muslims wouldn't come here.
Well, let's hit
have
that right after the break.
Okay.
That's a great question. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We're going to be back right after this break with Chrisjahn Beck and Rabbi David Kaufman. We really appreciate both of these people being here on our show tonight. They're very thoughtful and intelligent, unlike me and Lefty. So we'll be back right after this break.
We strive not to be, for you, the listener.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, you missed it. She didn't get it up on the thing.
No, that's okay.
Maddie was asleep. No, we're just teasing. We'll be back right after this break.
Chrisjahn Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. We are proud to work with military personnel and their families. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertroche, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere. Our licensed mental health therapists provide individual counseling to children, adolescents, and adults, including couples and marital counseling. Visit our website at BertrosandAssociates.com for more information or call 515-334-9484. Our offices are located at 5525 Meredith Drive in Des Moines, just east of Skate North off Merle Hay Road. Isn't it time to talk to someone? Take care of yourself and your family. Contact Bertrosh and Associates.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. This is the ISIS 2-hour special, I get. You know, I'm not going to even put them in the title of the show. We don't have a title of the show. It's a 2-hour special. We got great guests. We got a lot to talk about. And I'm having an excellent time. And I hope that you all listening are having an excellent time, because this is, I am getting exponentially more intelligent by participating and being here and asking questions of our fine people. We got Rabbi David Kaufman from I'm not even gonna, I'm gonna let Doc keep pronouncing it, because
Jeshurun.
Yeah, I keep messing. I'll mess it up. And my friend Chrisjahn Beck from Iowa State, Atheist Agnostics, providing a little bit more of a secularized perspective. But we're getting along. We're doing well. And the question that I want to know, Chrisjahn, you pointed out that there's maybe a call for Muslims the world over that's dictated from the Quran itself, from the Quran inside the cover, yes. Not just sayings, not just the Hadith. Okay, so we have the Quran making a call to Muslims to join the caliphate if it's established, and I want to know, ISIS has done that.
Right.
Who comes? Who shows up?
That depends. I think in Europe and in the Americas and in the so-called West, that's going to be radicals for the most part. Within the Middle East and Northern Africa, there are various organizations that have been attempting to do something similar for a long time, whether it's countries living under theocracies or whether you're talking about the Taliban or Al-Qaeda. There is a fertile bed there to draw from of people who are seeking that. I mean, just to give some reference here, though, the Taliban has even been denounced by ISIS as betraying Islam, because at one point they recognized some of their neighbors, they recognized the borders of some of their neighbors, and they engaged in talks with the United Nations. When you have a caliphate, any participation in an international governing body or recognizing of borders of other countries immediately strips you of authority, and there is a call for you to be overthrown. So for people who seek this kind of pure, very strict, very literal interpretation of what a caliphate and what the caliph should be, there are quite a few people who are going to be drawn to that. In Iowa or in Minnesota, it's going to be much more difficult to do. If for no other reason than these are recognized terrorist organizations, and if you publicly espouse support for them, you will be investigated, and you can have your passport stripped. So people kind of have to play along until they can get there, at least with regard to ISIS.
Now, Rabbi, I have a thought that perhaps, and we've been hearing a lot about this, and I want you to provide some context. I think that it's a little bit reductive the way the media reports it. Something very easy to say is that the populations in Europe and or in Western Europe and Central Europe that are a lot less assimilated than they are here in the United States, Muslim populations that see themselves as not gaining the benefits of citizenship in places like France or Spain or the United Kingdom, are going to have a lot more vulnerable populations. I think that's a reductive way to look at it, though, because I think that anybody can be quote-unquote radicalized. It doesn't matter where you live or where you come. So could you maybe speak to that a little bit? Are Muslim populations in Europe, North Africa, much more vulnerable to this sort of call that Chrisjahn's talked about?
I think there are a couple different things that go on. I think one of the things that goes on is, in at least some parts of Europe, the Europeans are more tolerant to imams that actually advocate for stuff than Americans would be. That's a problem. They actually hear a more radical message in a lot of different parts of Europe. I think that that communities that aren't assimilated and places where you have very high unemployment and you have people who just don't feel connected, that's a problem. And I think that a lot of these people seem to be young people who actually are not living a bad life. They're people who are being told that there's a purpose in going to fight for the Islamic State. Mm-hmm. It's really almost a purpose-driven message that they're getting in Europe, and they're mostly being radicalized online, to be honest. These are people who are lost and trying to find their way. So you have these 3 girls, they're young girls that are
in Turkey right now, yeah.
Or at least we hope they're in Turkey, that they're not already in Syria trying to go. These are people who didn't have a bad life there. They obviously just left for excitement and purpose,
Sure.
And the message, I think, in a lot of mosques is changing now. I think they didn't think that they needed to speak out against this so much, and now imams have taken notice that they're losing their own children.
And we'll get to that in a second. But so, Doc, I can't remember her name, but an official in the Obama administration got a lot of heat from the right recently for pointing out that and I'm going to spot something I saw on Facebook, a Facebook meme of one of my conservative acquaintances, that they're not crazy, they just need jobs. And you know who I'm talking about, but I can't remember who it is.
Oh yeah.
Right. As the designated conservative person in the and maybe everybody is except me, I don't know, but. What I heard the rabbi say is that there are some of these folks who may be more to do, maybe employment opportunity or whatever would help them feel more connected, but also we have these kids that don't have that issue. And so what was the heat on her overblown? Was the criticism unfair, or
Well, the problem is
or is it too complicated for that sort of statement to?
Well, yes, it's too complicated for that statement. But the second part of my answer is going to be this problem. You have a state; they're trying to become an actual legitimized state. That is their goal, and their goal is to. And they're very. I mean, one of the things they're doing in Libya is distracting us from what's going on in their core center, right? It's kind of like a George Bush policy, as long as we're fighting over there, we're okay here. And the problem really is you have a lot of these people that are being radicalized in prison, but you also have something of a legitimacy. Now, I'm not saying it's a legitimate state. That's not my issue. But you could really take a look at, they're really trying to do something. You have affluent people that have no direction, especially the young folks. I deal with young folks all the time. They have no direction. They have none. And they go, well, this is how I can help my beliefs. I think part of this is a very good social media campaign on behalf of ISIS.
Yeah, their propaganda.
They're better than anything we're putting out. And so these people don't really understand what's happening when they go there. The other thing is, there are a lot of mercenaries that have gone over there to either fight against them or to fight for them. I mean, you have to keep that in mind, that there's a lot of people that are fighting for money in this. I mean, those are a lot of reports. Go ahead, Rabbi.
One of the issues you run into is the fact that people who are foreign fighters don't care about local populations.
Right.
They're perfectly willing to have local populations shelled by other people as long as they move. So we run into the fact that these guys aren't fighting over their home. They're fighting for an idea, and they're perfectly willing to let the people die who are fighting for their home.
And Chrisjahn, you wanted to respond to that too.
Yeah, I think one thing that we need to clear up, though, is this idea that what they're seeking is a legitimate state, because they have no interest in receiving legitimacy from the rest of the world. That's not the goal. They
are interested in establishing caliphate.
That's absolutely
I want to respond
true.
to this too when Chrisjhahn's on here.
That's absolutely true.
And you're right. They're not interested in legitimacy from us.
Right. It's legitimacy by force.
Yeah, and that's what they're wanting for. They're wanting legitimacy,
yes.
However they get it. Watching nations over a period of time, they always morph through things. When Saddam Hussein first took over, he just solidified his own home base. He didn't care what else happened. And then pretty soon he became more of a player across the stage. This happens with these kind of things. Go ahead, Rabbi.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
one of the issues that
gonna
I
go
have is
long on this
what
segment. Go
qualifies as a state.
Right.
I mean, look,
Right,
we're
exactly.
looking
That-
at people who control territory. They have an army. They're producing their own money now. Actually,
they're providing
Yes.
services
They're
for their
providing
populations.
service. I mean,
Healthcare.
functionally, they are a state.
Yes.
The other thing that we have to understand is Syria and Iraq don't exist anymore.
Right.
I mean, they don't exist as
Right.
nations anymore.
Right.
We're dealing with divided populations. Functionally, what you're looking at in Iraq is Sunni Iraq. The Islamic State basically is Sunni Iraq at this point because the Iraqi government ended up spending so much time paying attention to the Shia, backed by Iran, and were allowed. Nobody countered them on that. That there was a Sunni rebellion.
And this is what this leads right into what I wanted, especially to talk to you two about.
Let's take a break right
Okay.
now. We'll be back right after the break. What are we going to talk about?
Well, we're going to talk about like how do we fight this now? Is it a state
That's right.
or is it a terrorist organization?
All right.
What's our policy?
Yeah, that might take up the next half hour. We're going
I
to be
know.
back right after the break. We got Rabbi David Kaufman and Chrisjahn Beck, head of the ISU Atheist and Agnostic Society. We'll be back right after this break. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We hope you're getting informed.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. And if you notice that I perked up a little bit because we've come to the hub of this discussion that I really want to delve into a little bit more depth, and that is we've been fighting ISIS in some form for 2 years. Really, ever since and you guys will jump on me, I'm sure, if I make a misstep here, but there was a form of the Islamic State fighting in Syria from the very beginning of the rebellion against Assad. Like that,
Yes.
they kind of came out of that stew of folks fighting Assad. To one degree or another. So we've been fighting with varying degrees of success. If you listen to the administration now, they say that the air campaign has halted the expansion of territory. If you listen to other observers, they say, well, sure, but that's because they're not really pushing anything. They got bogged down in that city in Kuwait. His name I can't remember anymore, which I'm sure you guys will jump into. But my question is, how do we clarify our policy as a country? Because we know take Nazi Germany gets thrown around a lot. Take Nazi Germany, for example. We knew how to fight them. We knew how to fight that state, how to fight that expansionist threat. ISIS, we've been approaching it as a terrorist organization, but terrorist organizations don't typically hold territory. So do we fight them as a state then? If we fight them as a state, does that give them some semblance to other radical Muslims around the world that, hey, they're being treated on an equal footing with other countries now? What is the right course here? Because I think that I can't crack that nut, and I think that question, that problem, is what's making our foreign policy so confused. Chrisjahn, what do you think?
I think that if I had a short, succinct answer to this, I would be making millions of dollars and living in Washington, D.C. right now.
Right.
It's really tricky because we are essentially fighting a terrorist organization and a state. The biggest problem that I see is that what ISIS wants, there is no bigger proponent for a war between the United States and ISIS than ISIS. Mm-hmm. They want a war with the United States. That is what they want. They have said it over and over again in their propaganda. They've had that in their magazine. Now, if we do send in ground forces, what we could do, theoretically, would be to crush them, destroy any semblance of a notion that what they are building is actually God's new Islamic empire, and you can kind of quell the propaganda flow, because if all of a sudden all this territory that they control is crawling with U.S. Marines and ground forces, it's really hard to continue that campaign. But at the same time, that's what they want. They want us there, and they fully expect to be massacred to some extent, because it's part of the apocalyptic prophecy that makes up the Islamic prophecies. So,
Rabbi, it to me, you can't kill an idea.
Right.
You can conquer a state, but what are we fighting?
Look, we haven't figured out how to fight a state since World War II. To be honest, let's start right there.
Right.
I mean, fighting a state requires killing civilians, and we have a number of different issues with that. One is we don't believe that ISIS really has the support of the populations where they are.
Is that true?
I mean, the question is to what extent is it true? Like I said, there are a lot of foreign fighters there who don't care about the populations. We are disgusted by things like the Syrian government dropping chemical and biological weapons on populations and killing large numbers of people. Well, that was how Assad figured that he would be defeating this army, right? That's what he was planning on doing. We have the reality of the fact that this is a Sunni state in Iraq. Do we really want to send tens of thousands of troops back into Iraq? Because that's what we'd have to do. No, ISIS was in Iraq when we left Iraq.
Yep.
The administration was warned that if we pulled out all our troops, the Iraqi government would not be able to maintain control over the Sunni areas. And the second we did, this is what happened. I mean, so that's the reality. Our decision is, do we want to send a large number of troops back into Iraq? I think the answer to that is no way in the world do we want to do that. In which case, the real question for the United States is it more important for us to stop ISIS from doing what it's doing there, or do we only care about protecting ourselves? And if we only care about protecting ourselves, we're more concerned about making sure that Homeland Security knows what it's doing and our borders are sealed and that we're not having planes blown up.
Doc, what do you think? I mean, I think that there are fair criticisms of the Obama administration with respect to the threat, but I think there's a lot that the right is missing with this threat. We can't arm. There are no more moderate rebels really anymore, right?
Either for them or against them,
right?
So, I will tell you a couple of things. I've said before on this program, America is blinded with its foreign policy. You have people running the country that truly don't understand any other culture besides ones they grow up in, and we often misinterpret and use our own standards for these people. One of the things you got to keep in mind is the estimates of this Islamic State army range between 30 and 50,000. Yet, look at how much territory they have under control, and look at what they have, 4 million, 8 million people under control, something like that.
8 million.
So you're talking about not even 0.1% controlling the rest of the population, mainly through fear. The bottom line is we shouldn't have pulled out of Iraq because at least we had it stable, if not very nice. We pulled out. There's a big old pile of poo there, and it's heating up. And the more we stir it, the more it's going to stink. And we really have to make a decision as a nation. Are we going to be policemen of the world, or are we going to allow things like this to continue on? You have to keep in mind this particular brand of religion is so insidious and so poisonous. It is taking people, young women, and that are willing to sacrifice themselves for this ideal that does not exist. So from our perspective, either we have to get back in a fight and send tens of thousands of troops over there, or we have to back out and say, we're going to drone the hell out of you, and that's the best we're going to do. Now, with that, I'm going to take a break. What's going to be the subject for the next section?
I want to talk more about the administration.
All right. So we'll be back right after this. We're going to talk about the administration's success and failures in handling the situation. I want to thank our guests, Chrisjahn Beck and Rabbi David Kaufman of Temple B'nai Jeshurun, for coming in. We really appreciate both of your intellectual analysis of this. We'll be back right after the break. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Bertroche and Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. We are proud to work with military personnel and their families. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertroche, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere. Our licensed mental health therapists provide individual counseling to children, adolescents, and adults, including couples and marital counseling. Visit our website at bertrocheandassociates.com for more information or call 515-334-9484. Our offices are located at 5525 Meredith Drive in Des Moines, just east of Skate North off Merle Hay Road. Isn't it time to talk to someone? Take care of yourself and your family. Contact Bertroche and Associates.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. We're winding up the first hour of our massive 2-hour ISIS-related show, and we're about to lose Rabbi David Kaufman. So, Rabbi, I want you to I want to get your take in this segment on what the administration has done well, what it has failed at, and whether or not the specific criticisms from the Republicans who have and I'll tell you, you know what? Right on the top of this segment, you can tell me if I'm all wet on this. This new Republican Congress that we have, which wanted so desperately to be in power, is still punting on any kind of vote, any kind of debate, any kind of actual real American involvement in this war that we've been fighting now for several months in Syria and Iraq. And but they're the loudest, they're the first in line to tell the president that he doesn't love America and that he's failed miserably. So, Rabbi, what has the administration done poorly? What's it done well? Are the Republican criticisms of this president with respect to ISIS, Syria, and Iraq fair criticisms?
Well, I think the general criticism is that the administration came in with an idealistic view that it could actually solve problems that have been around for a long time and solve them in a matter of a couple of years. What we really have here is that most people feel like, why should we bother to fight but for people who we don't care about? Why not? We don't like either side. Let them kill each other, and God will sort them out. That seems to be the policy in a lot of things. If people, they look at Middle East policy. They said it was great when Iraq was fighting Iran. Why didn't we just keep Iraq fighting Iran? And then we weren't having to deal with any of this stuff. And we went into Iraq. We messed with that, and now everybody's attacking us, and everything's falling apart. The policy of this administration right now is containment. And it's containment all over the place. It's containment of nuclear threshold Iran. It's containment of ISIS. It's containment of the Syria civil war. The idea is basically that as long as those problems stay within those borders, we could care less. The reality of the situation is none of those problems stay within those borders. And we're already seeing it spread to North Africa, and North Africa is a fertile ground for all kinds of radicalism. In fact, North and Central Africa are. And if that blows up, we're going to see that here. One of the major things we're going to see are massive numbers of refugees. And unless we're going to start turning away refugees, we're going to have to deal with that too. We got 70,000 Syrian refugees coming to the United States now from that crisis. And a lot of those people are going to be on one side of the radicals or another. They're either going to be Islamist radicals who are connected to the Muslim Brotherhood, Islamist radicals who are connected to Al Qaeda. They could be family members of some of these people who, the fighters got killed, and therefore you've got a widow and children who are now refugees, homeless orphans who need to be taken care of. But those people have radical theology.
Is this a problem that America can fix, or is this a problem only Muslims can fix?
Look, I think it's a problem that if we try to dump off on somebody else, isn't going to get solved. So my belief is yes and, not either or. I believe that if we're not working with the Muslim community in this country, we have no chance of combating terrorism, much less dealing with any of these issues. And we need to be working with moderate Muslims and not just the Muslim Brotherhood Muslims. And one of the criticisms of the counterterrorism program, the program on extremism that the administration just did, is they didn't bring in any of the moderate Muslim voices. They had Muslim Brotherhood voices across the board and didn't bring in any of the people who were talking about separation of church and state. They didn't. There are arguments within the American Muslim community also. Between people who support CARE, the Council of American Islamic Relations, and people who are more like Zuhdi Jasser from the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, who's a friend of mine, arguing that what we really need to see is the Muslim community in the United States needs to start arguing for separation of church and state, needs to start arguing for modernism and assimilation, and the Muslim Brotherhood organizations don't do that. And as long as that battle's going on, we're not going to be able to deal with the other battle, because the Muslims in the United States and certainly in Europe also have the same issue. They're battling among themselves instead of even addressing the radicals who they both oppose. Both sides oppose.
Let me ask this, and Doug, you have the last word with Rabbi before he has to leave. But Southern Poverty Law Center came out with a report recently that talked about how Islamic radical folks that practice a brand of Islam who are terrorist attacks are not the fundamental threat in this country, that we face more homegrown terrorism from radical right-wing ultra-nationalist Christians, frankly, than we do from Muslims in this country. And that was the new report that came out that I think, and I don't have it in front of me, and I don't have the percentages, but it was something like 18% of foiled attacks or violent attacks was Muslim based, and the vast majority was other things. Right-wing nationalism is a lot more of a problem.
What you have, we've had right-wing militias for a long period of time. The right-wing militias have fairly large numbers. They're generally well-armed. You have soldiers who've come back from fighting wars who have post-traumatic stress disorder. Some of them are affiliated with those organizations. Those people are concerned. But when you have people who go off and fight and they get arms training and come back to the United States and they see the United States as an enemy, they're very dangerous. So we see lone wolves. If you look at the lone wolf attacks we've had, the real terrorism attacks we've had, they've been primarily Muslim radicals. And that's been a big problem. I mean, yes, you had the Oklahoma City bombing, but that was a while ago, right?
Well, we just had the guy in Texas that attacked the he attacked a couple of different federal buildings and tried to kill some people, and he was attached to he was under orders from Jesus Christ, and I'll get his name over the break, and we'll talk about it.
So we'll talk about mental health. Mental health care is a big deal. I mean, for a lot of these issues, a lot of these end up being mental health cases. And if you separate out the mental health issues, you're dealing with religious fundamentalists of one side or another who are very extremist, who have some sort of agenda to overthrow the government. And you have those on both sides. That they've had an easier time infiltrating the Christian based groups than they have the Muslim ones. And part of the government's problem is that they can't get Arabic speakers, and people from the Muslim community, enough of them, to infiltrate a lot of these groups.
And so law enforcement. Law enforcement has
enforcement problem.
Well, law enforcement has an easier time infiltrating a whacked out Christian sect that wants to do a lot of damage and take that out easier, and that makes a lot of sense. So, Doc, finish up this segment for us with the Rabbi before I have to leave.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I really appreciate the Rabbi coming on. I follow him on Facebook. I'm sure you don't mind more Facebook followers
or Twitter.
Rav
DK on Twitter. RAVDK.
All right. And then Facebook is David Jay Kaufman, Kaufman. He really writes some insightful stuff. One of the things I wished we could add some time for is you had shared an article about what role the media plays in fostering some of this. Some of the tensions overseas. So I was hoping to get to some of that, but maybe we'll get you back on. We can talk about that later.
Happy to be back.
All right. Anything you want to tell our audience? Anything you want to, share with them?
I don't know. There's a lot of
Like,
difficult
this is the
things
greatest
going on in
show
the world,
you've
but
ever
we're actually working hard, and I appreciate you guys taking on these topics, and I appreciate you inviting me in. I'm happy to be back, and appreciate being here with Chrisjahn too. So.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. We'll be back right after this break. This is a 3-minute break. It's at the bottom of the hour. We'll be back in 3 minutes. Thanks a lot, everybody, for tuning in.
Petrosian Associates, how can I help you?
Petrosian Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Petrosh, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places, especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart. And it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking around for the first hour of our massive ISIS terrorism extravaganza.
I have a news break.
Oh, we have a news break. Go ahead.
Obama vetoed the Keystone Pipeline.
Oh, yeah, he did that earlier this morning.
Yeah.
Oh, rats. I thought, I thought it was a news break.
No, well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean...
You ruined
Please
my thunder.
Tell us more. I didn't mean to
He
bigfoot
vetoed
you.
it.
Obama did what?
He hates jobs and he hates oil.
Yeah.
He hates Americans for prosperity. I don't know.
Yeah, something
You know,
like
here's
that.
the thing. You know who I want to get on the show is Ed.
The president?
Well, you know,
that would be great.
you know, if I had
Chrisjahn,
that kind
could you
of
call
If I had that kind
Sure.
of juice,
Brock,
I wouldn't be-
absolutely.
You know, honestly,
Got him on my speed dial.
If I had that kind of juice, you wouldn't be my partner, and Chrisjahn wouldn't be on the show.
Yeah, that's fair.
Honest to
fair.
God.
No, fair enough.
But anyway,
we could only be
Ed-
Franklin Graham. We can
Yeah.
get these presidents to.
But I wanted to get Ed on the show. Maybe we'll talk to him next week because he's doing this march against pipelines, and I want to know if it's just the Keystone Pipeline or if it's all of them.
Oh, Ed, it's all of them.
Well, yeah, but at first it was just the Keystone.
Well,
then I asked him, and then he didn't really answer. So the bottom line is, though, if you're marching against pipelines, there's so many of them. It's like marching against interstates.
Well, he just did the whole country. I think that he's.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's in good enough walking shape that he could walk every single pipeline that you want to talk.
Oh yeah.
mention.
Well, and once you get good at something, you don't ever want to stray away from it.
That's
so
true.
He's got to keep walking to be viable.
I think that's a good point, and I'll tell you this: if I were going to be walking pipelines, I would make sure that I was walking pipelines that were pumping down to New Orleans. And I would have started it a month ago, and I would have gotten there this past Tuesday. It would have been awesome.
So yeah, well, I would have driven down there.
And then,
I would have driven next to you. I would have followed along behind the bus.
I could have used a support vehicle.
Yes,
I got So we're still here with Chrisjahn, president of the Iowa State Atheist Agnostic Society, and we started touching on this other issue with this ISIS conversation with Islam in general, and I got a bunch of questions I want to talk to you about it. The big hot button, like, gross part of this in American political discourse right now, not talking about the disgusting, despicable things that ISIS has done, but what really kind of makes me uncomfortable listening to how the media, politicians, everybody is talking about these issues is, and you and I have talked about this a little bit before. Mm-hmm. What is the appropriate level of opprobrium we should be expecting from folks who share the similar religious belief? Not similar to ISIS, but a follow-up. You know my take on religion and its role and motivation and what it can be blamed for and what it shouldn't be blamed for. Is it right to continue, like what Republican, especially like a Lindsey Graham or Rudy Giuliani has said, is it right to keep pinning Islamic terrorism to each other when what you do is give these terrorists a convenient justification for what they're doing? That's been the president's kind of tortured argument.
Right. I think the president's disappointed me a little bit on this, but having said that, I'm not an expert on it, and I think anybody who tries to go after a sitting president for foreign policy is going to get into trouble just because they have so much more information than everybody else does. But what you're talking about specifically, it's the first thing you have to do is draw a distinction between how much blame is there to be laid on Muslims versus how much blame is there to be laid on Islam. Because I think one of the problems with the way that we've addressed this so far, specifically the president, is he came out and he said that they are un-Islamic, I believe is what he said in one of his addresses. He said that they are un-Islamic, and then he had another quote, which was kind of a ridiculous analogy. He said if the JV team puts on the Laker uniforms, that doesn't make them the Lakers, referencing ISIS being the JV team to Al-Qaeda's Lakers. Although with the way the Lakers are playing this year, the JV team's not that much worse.
Fair enough.
But the problem is, it's really difficult to come out and say that somebody is un-Islamic, because if you understand the root of what ISIS is, they are very, very Islamic. They are strict, literal interpretationists of the Quran. To call them un-Islamic simply because they represent a different breed of Islam than we're used to in the United States, or even a different breed of Islam than we've been dealing with in diplomatic issues in the Middle East for a long time, is problematic. It just doesn't get you anywhere. It's a non-starter.
But why? This is my problem. So I was talking to somebody about this a couple weeks ago, and I keep hearing it come up from Republicans. And Pat, maybe you want to club me over the head of this, but this idea, we need to name it. We're gonna call them cowards, and we have to call them thugs and all that. We have to. And Lindsey Graham did that thing where he's like, I would call them what they are, and all this naming and shaming stuff. And other than the fact that they don't care, it's not effective. It doesn't mean anything to them. But what good comes from that? What, for whose benefit does all of this business of we have to make sure that everyone knows that they are not just murderers who have some kind of weird justification for what they do? They are Islamic murderers. We don't do this with other religions. We don't even do this with secular folks. We don't call it. It doesn't make sense.
A couple weeks ago.
Well, right, but no, the media tried and they failed. The moniker of an atheistic terrorist who killed those kids in Chapel Hill, that hasn't taken hold from anybody. It came off like one time, and then it got dropped.
We're going to finish this right after the break because Lefty's all up in arms again, so that's always a fun thing to see.
Leave me hanging, man.
Yeah, we want to thank all of our sponsors: Petrosian Associates, Lubinas Law Firm, Halo Capital at Des Moines Interest Rates, Des Moines Anesthesia PC. They do anesthesia and pain management. Give them a call, 515-574-6442. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and check us out at docandlefty.com. We'll be back right after this break.
Petrosian Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. We are proud to work with military personnel and their families. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Petrosh, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere. Our licensed mental health therapists provide individual counseling to children, adolescents, and adults, including couples and marital counseling. Visit our website at petrosianassociates.com for more information or call 515-334-9484. Our offices are located at 5525 Meredith Drive in Des Moines, just east of Skate North off Merle Hay Road. Isn't it time to talk to someone? Take care of yourself and your family. Contact Petrosh and Associates.
Welcome back, Don't laugh. Don't laugh either.
The Cubbies are going to suck this
either
year.
Of you. No,
you know what Cubs stands for, don't you?
NLC champions.
Nope.
I don't want to hear any argument about it. It's done. It's done.
Chrisjahn, you know what Cubs stands for?
I don't know what Cubs stands for.
Can't understand baseball in September.
Oh,
that's what the Cubs to me.
Boo. Maybe for the last 107 years, but not this year.
But not this year.
Not this year. Not with what they've
done.
Be
different.
This year's going to be awesome.
We're talking about radical Christians and Islamists. And now we're talking about a radical Cubite.
Man, I won't have you. You know what? I won't have you do it. I won't have you disparage my baseball team like that. I'm going to no.
Hey, listen. I'm a Raiders fan and a Cubs fan, so I take it. I got a solid year of getting beat in the head.
This whole thing is going off the rails a little bit because I was about to start making some jokes about being a Cubs terrorist, and that would not be in good taste. So, but Chrisjahn,
that's never stopped.
The Cubs terrorist is just a cardinal. That's all.
That's pretty funny. I mean, the Cubs have owned the Cardinals, and I know that you're a Braves fan, so it doesn't really matter. You're out on the East Coast, winning lots of divisional titles.
Yeah, not recently. Mortgaged off our entire team. This year.
Yeah, but I mean, you got the best of my second favorite Cubs pitcher of all time, which is frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, okay, so Chrisjahn, we don't do this. The media and politicians especially, we don't do this. But all it seems to me, when I'm talking about the benefit of naming and shaming, all it seems to do, it doesn't clarify anything, in my opinion. All it seems to do is antagonize the folks that we're supposed to be bringing along on our side. Like, hey, every other Muslim, look at how bad these folks are, but you're the good ones. It's gross to me. Please tell me why I'm wrong. If I am wrong.
I don't think you are completely wrong.
My God, I'll tell him why he's wrong.
I think there's a difference between political posturing and grandstanding, which is, they're Islamic terrorists. You have to say Islamic, otherwise you're being politically correct. There's a difference between that and recognizing as a part of coherent foreign policy that what we are dealing with is rooted in Islam. There's a difference there. So, of course, what the theater that we see somewhat in the Senate and House chambers and somewhat on television and on the Sunday morning talk shows is just posturing and appeasing the base, giving people what they want to hear, which at this point for the right is heavily rooted in Christian faith. I mean, you've got the evangelical voters who are a huge voting bloc for the right, and this condemnation, whether it's explicit or implicit, of Islam goes over well. It scores you points. That, I think, is somewhat perverse. But we do, as a matter of a coherent foreign policy, have to recognize that this cannot simply be explained by historical context, socioeconomic conditions, and a history of strife in the region. Those are all important. They're all critical. But to address those things and neglect the religious aspect of it is going to get you nowhere.
Doc, you know where I came from religiously speaking. Big time. And I'm still in contact with a few of the folks from the old neighborhood. And I'll tell you, both of them right now are ministers. One's in Minnesota, one's in Sioux Falls. They acknowledge, especially after what happened in Libya, they say, we're in a holy war. None of this business of appeasement. This is a 2015 holy war. We're fighting it. Jesus Christ is telling us that we need to go and do something about it. Is that, respond to a Chrisjahn, but that's out there on the right. You don't hear Christian Democrats talking about that stuff.
Well, you hear a lot of devout Christians talking about it.
There are devout Christian Democrats, sir, and
yes.
my brother-in-law and my sister are devout Christian Democrats. They're not advocating holy war against Islam. It's only on the right. Only. I'm gonna
disagree that it's only on the right. But here's the truth of the matter here. Back before World War II happened, Christians, Jews, and Muslims would get together and go to each other's churches, synagogues, and temples. All right? That's what they did. They got together. They worshiped with each other, being a band of brothers. Now, World War II happened. The caliphate was disbanded a little bit before World War II, after World War I, before World War II. And essentially what happened is, and you can blame the Jews for a lot of the things that they did. You could blame the Muslims for the things they did. You can blame France and Britain for the way they tried to split up Palestine and the rest of it.
You're talking about Israelis, not...
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
guys. I see where you're going. Yep.
So the bottom line is suddenly they stopped going to each other's places. Suddenly they're enemies because of things that foreign powers have done there. And all that's going on is more foreign powers fighting for oil. The rabbi had it right. We seem not to care unless it involves oil. So the bottom line is right now you have a caliphate, for lack of a better term, in the Levant, which is that entire area there. And what they are doing is saying, well, if you don't have to convert to Islam, but you have to pay a foreigner tax, and I don't know exactly what the phrase is, and they're taxing all the Christians. And the problem really boils down to, and this is what I hear in the Christian rags, the Christians that are getting rounded up and beheaded are the ones that are not paying that tax. They're the ones that are saying, well, we're not going to do that. We're going to stay faithful to our Christ, and they get executed for that. Keep in mind, yeah, I believe it is a holy war. I don't necessarily believe it's a holy war of Christians versus Islam. I think it's everybody versus radicals. And that includes radical Islam. One of the things you asked Chrisjahn, well, where you're wrong, here's the difference. Christians aren't putting together a 30,000-man army, wiping people out with the blessing of the Pope. You don't have that going on. You do have Christian radicals. I freely admit it. But the bottom line is you're not seeing them organized like this with an intent to return our way of life back to the Middle Ages or earlier. That's where you're wrong. So when you start talking about Christian radicals and Islamist radicals, you have two completely different groups. They are two completely different mindsets. And this ISIS thing is something that is not going to go away very soon or very easily. Now, Chrisjahn has been chomping at the bits to argue with me. You've been giving me the look over the eyeglasses. So we'll be back right after the break to get the rebuttals from these two about why Christians suck, because I'm sure they're chomping at the bit to say something along those lines. We'll be back right after this break.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Get away from my Sumito credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. We're still here with, oh man, I don't even know. We might just have to give you the championship belt as far as guests for the show are concerned, Chrisjahn, because I think Senator Zahn has to, he still has the title.
He's got the belt.
He's got the belt, but we have to bend over sideways to convince him to come on anymore. He's so high and highfalutin and running companies.
Well, and he's running a guerrilla warfare against the establishment.
Yeah,
so
he doesn't have any time to deal with us. But I text Chrisjahn. He's here with bells on, ready to just lay intellectual waste.
Let me defend Senator Zahn. We have a lot of fun, and I will tell you,
we do.
If we call Senator Zahn, he usually will try to find room for us.
Yep.
So
how dare he have a schedule? Anyway, so Chrisjahn,
whereas Chrisjahn, he doesn't do anything. So he's got all the time in the world.
It's a lot easier to find free time when you don't believe in anything.
Yeah. Well, there you go. The only part that upsets me is I'm like, well, dang it, now I have to put pants on and go somewhere.
Well, that's
and what's sad is you don't have to wear pants here. Nobody sees you from your chest down.
I'll tell you what.
Careful what you say.
If there is one
show's
thing,
not over.
Right? Yes.
Well, Maddie's back there going, I insist that everybody wear pants when they show up to the studio.
If there's one thing that, based on that comment, and I know for a fact about you that the three of us are fairly anti-pants. So.
Hey, just because you like looking in my windows when you're my neighbor.
Hey, I like being comfortable and being around other guys who are being comfortable. Let's stop it right there, Chrisjahn. Why? I can tee off on something. I feel like that this notion that there is no Christian army misses the point. I mean, it doesn't. But we'll talk about that. But Chrisjahn, what? There, just go. I don't even have I can't remember exactly what we were going to argue with you about at this point.
Well, it's
why
not
Christians suck. That's what we're arguing about.
It's not even. I'm not. That's how long do you have? I'm not even going to go down that road.
We have 7 minutes.
I think
7 minutes, or actually now it's 6 minutes 5 seconds.
So part of what I want to talk about is your characterization of Europe for a while, because this idea that prior to World War II it was a kumbaya session.
I didn't say Europe. I said in the Middle East.
In the Middle East. Yeah. But I think that even is a massive oversimplification, because there has always been strife in that region. There just always has been. This idea that it was somehow stirred up by World War II. I mean, obviously, the installation of Israel as a state caused a lot of havoc. But
and the way it was established. I mean, let's face it, the Jews utilized suicide bombers and everything else back then, just like they're doing today. So you can blame a lot of people. But you're saying you're trying to tell me that these people weren't all hunky dory.
Yeah, there's been fighting for a long time, and I mean this is nothing new. The West has certainly stirred up a hornet's nest over and over again. Our economic interests in the region seem to dictate that every decade or so we just stir the pot up a little bit, and it's frustrating as somebody who wishes that we would stop doing that. But then as somebody who drives a car, also, I probably have to say that I've probably tacitly endorsed some of this. But I think when we talk about this distinction between Islamic terrorism and Christian terrorism and all this other stuff, I think to a certain extent some of that misses the point. You can call something terrorism. All that terrorism really means is violence or something in pursuit of an ideological agenda, be it religious or political or whatever it may be. We don't call something Christian terrorism because we're a lot more accepting of Christians in this country. It's as simple as that. I mean, if a Christian goes on a shooting spree, goes to their former place of work and kills a bunch of people, we don't call it a Christian act of terrorism, partially because we're very comfortable with Christianity in this country, so we don't look for justifications outside of what seems immediately present or explicit, but also partially because a lot of times when things like that happen, there just aren't explicit religious undertones to what goes on. A lot of times with terrorism from the Islamic community, there are. That's where we're still having some trouble here. And I think to step back, for instance, after the Charlie Hebdo attacks, which we've talked about before on your program, there was a systematic effort to try and disassociate Islam and religion from those acts. We are uncomfortable. Our egalitarian sensibilities are offended by this notion that you can go after somebody, that you can say, look, religion is implicated here. That offends our democratic notions. So there is this systematic effort to try and separate those two. And I think sometimes it comes off as bigoted, frankly, when it's coming from some of the people in the right wing in the United States. Sometimes I think that's perceived and it's not actually present, and other times I think it is absolutely present. But other times it's just a matter of identifying what's going on, and I don't think that's unfair.
Well, but here, let me rebut that for a second.
Sure.
We may not call it Christian terrorism, but lefties use this phrase quite a bit tonight, right-wing Christians, right? Right-wing extremists.
What else would you call them?
Well, and exactly, that's my point. When you introduce religion, right, fair enough. If you have Timothy McVeigh, right, he's not necessarily a right-wing Christian. He was just a terrorist. That's what he did. And when you have people like when you have an abortion doctor getting shot by a right-wing Christian, that's terrorism.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can call that a right-wing Christian extremist.
Nobody does. That's my point.
I do.
Well, sure, but
but a lot of people do. A lot of people call it that. I mean, even people, the Christians I know view it as terrorism. That's not I'm anti-abortion, but about as anti-abortion as you can get. But the bottom line is, I don't condone that.
Right.
And the thing with Islamic extremists, right? When they go out and commit terrorism, it's still terrorism. And when they sit there and scream Allahu Akbar before they blow themselves up, that's a pretty good indication that it is an Islamist act of terror. So how do you want us to say that? I mean, you bring it up that you say, well, geez, how come we don't call them Christian terrorists?
No, I brought that up, and here's what
you brought it up. Give me a second. But yet you're sitting here saying, well, geez, how come we don't call us Christian terrorists? Because we use a different phrase for that, and that is right-wing Christian extremists. So go ahead, Blake.
Well, no, I mean, because here's
we got about 45 seconds.
This is the huge difficulty that I have with it right now, and Christian, maybe you'll disagree with this, but what's the guy from the Catholic lead, Donahue? What's his first name?
Phil Donahue.
No, it's not Phil.
No, it's not Phil.
No.
It's,
I can't
I'm drawing a
remember.
blank.
Anyway, Mr. Donahue or Franklin Graham. That's a good example. That's a guy everybody knows his name. When Scott Tiller, who had ties to Christian organizations and had talked to anti-abortion activists about what he wanted to do Scott Roeder, when he killed Dr. Tiller in Kansas, no one in the media that I can remember, and it wasn't like this big chorus from political leaders or media folks, had guys like Franklin Graham or the Cardinal from Boston come out to disavow what he did as an act of terrorism that had nothing to do with his Christian faith. In fact, we hear all the time from Christian leaders in this country, from all kinds of political folks, all the time, that say, look, people that do that are not Christian, and we do not give the same credence or level playing field of the argument to Muslim leaders, and we expect them to come out and do some sort of condemnation across the board of Muslim terrorism all the time. That is uneven. We're going to go to a break. Maybe have the two of you respond to that. That's my objection.
We'll be back right after this break. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places. Especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart. And it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Hey, so welcome back, everybody. I think I've laid out my objections fairly clearly at the top of the the bottom of the last segment. So Chrisjahn, we'll start with you, and then Doc, maybe close it out. But I believe, and I think that I'm right, that there's an imbalance in how this stuff is talked about, how it's reported, and how it's demagogued by politicians. We can all agree that politicians will demagogue whatever you want to put in front of them. But this in particular is demagogued and talked about in such a specific way that it makes me uncomfortable, makes me feel gross about the conversation. So, why am I just being oversensitive to everybody? Am I being Ben Affleck here once again? Where am I going wrong?
I don't think you necessarily are. So for one thing, let me make sure that I'm addressing specifically what you're asking. So the imbalance between, say, asking a imam to denounce acts of Muslim terrorism versus asking, say, Bill Donahue, which thankfully I figured that out, one of those ills, to denounce something like George Tiller, the right-wing Christian who killed...
George Tiller's the doctor.
George Tiller was
Scott
the doctor.
Roeder.
Scott Roeder, who killed George Tiller. Is that the imbalance that you're talking about?
Yeah, or were there, and Pat, you were around, were there Christian leaders being taken to task, or were there Catholic leaders being taken to task over the troubles in Ireland?
Well, yeah.
In the same way?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the key things is you have to keep in mind is Protestants versus Catholics up there in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, that's
when you have the Cardinals going, listen, this isn't what we live. This is what we're for. This is not what we're doing. And you have Sinn Féin going, we don't care. You still have condemnation. Now, don't get me wrong. You're always going to have some kind of crackpot preacher out there going, yeah, kill all the abortionists. We're all for that. But I will tell you, yeah, maybe the media didn't use the term terrorism, but I can tell you that's what that's the term Catholics used. And we said all the time, this is not a step forward for us. This is a step backwards. And you don't hear that kind of stuff very often from, you do now. I will tell you, since ISIS has risen, right, you hear a lot of that now. But up until maybe 2-3 years ago, you didn't hear a lot of people going like, well, yeah. And the reason is these people will kill you, right? These people will kill you. You have, in America, you have the right to get up there and say what you want. There's a lot of countries like France don't have anything like the First Amendment. And if you say something that offends people, yeah, you get dead. That's what happens throughout here. And so the bottom line is you're talking about a group who is trying to take us back 1,000 years. And in a way that is horrific, but still, I mean, apparently, according to what they think and believe, is very Quranic in nature. So the bottom line is you can call, I got a little bit off track here, but you can call Christians terrorists, right? But the phrase we use really comes back to right-wing Christian extremists. And a lot of people, and you can lump in the preppers there and everything else. The bottom line is, when you have an entire religion who tacitly, in some respects, support what's going on over there, whether through their being quiet or through supporting suicide bombers at $25,000 for the family per suicide bombers, you have to stop and go, well, really, what is that?
But wait.
So go ahead.
Wait. What you don't have in Islam is an entire religion that tacitly endorses this. This is where you have to draw a distinction. Most Muslims don't support what's going on over there. Now, whether or not you'd be willing to say that to the face of somebody in northern Iraq or Syria right now is totally different. But this idea that there is an entire religion that's rooted in the Quran, that because of the structure of their text somehow tacitly supports what's going on over there, is no more true than it would be if the same acts were being done in Christianity, in the name of Christianity, because the texts themselves, the Bible is just as violent, if not more violent, than the Quran. The problem, what we see is, we live in a nation that's 82% Christian, depending on the survey that you look at, 82% Christian, and we see the way that it's practiced in society today. So when there's something done, when somebody like Scott Roeder goes and kills George Tiller, and somebody says, well, that's not actually being done in the name of Christianity, we can look to our next door neighbors, the Methodists on one side and the Lutheran on the other, and say, yeah, they're not going out and killing people. And we can easily rationalize that, whereas what we see in the news predominantly from a lot of the Muslim communities, especially in the Middle East and Northern Africa, is all this violence. The fact of the matter is, though, that if you're looking, you can't just say Islam itself tacitly endorses what's going on in the Islamic State. That's an unfair characterization, because it's one particular interpretation of Islam. The vast majority of practicing Muslims would disavow that.
Which is why, but that leads me back to my original criticism of this idea. If that is the case, and we can all accept that it is, whatever religion that you're practicing, if we all say that the radicals in the radicals in Israel, in Myanmar, if you're a Buddhist, in the radicals here in the United States, if you're a Christian, if all those radicals, because we hear it from everybody. Oh, that's not what a Christian would do. That's not what a Muslim would do. Then why should we? And Doc, and this is where I would agree with you, Doc. When I'm pointing out, when I say right-wing Christian terrorist, that's an unfair characterization, right? Because why should we be tying the religion to something? We can talk about motivations all we want. I have the same problem with hate crime legislation for the most part. We can talk about the motivations for certain things all we want, and we can use that as a tool to understand why people want to do the things that they do and why they commit the sort of heinous acts that they do. But when we characterize something as religiously motivated, and we have this urge to tie them together, I think that what it does is, especially with Islam nowadays, it makes it somehow different. It makes a murder somehow different or more than a murder, and it also lets the murderer off the hook a little bit, at least by other folks that think like him religiously, because it says, oh well, See, there you go. He was doing it he was doing it for God. He was doing it for God, and it allows rather than leave a crime like murder out in the wilderness where it belongs in society, prison, whatever, however we punish it, it brings it in. It brings it in and makes it a little more acceptable to a few other people. That's my problem. That's my central problem with how we talk about acts like terrorism when they're religiously motivated.
I think you're right, and I think that's why I try and draw a distinction between, because when it happens, when somebody is insisting that we call it Islamic terrorism in a public,
Christian terrorism
or anything, or anything, for the most part, that is just dog whistle grandstanding.
Yes.
It is, you are appealing to an audience who is filling in the blanks that you're not saying, but as part of a coherent foreign policy, it is something that we have to consider.
All right. Well, I want to have the last word on the subject. Then we're going to get back to ISIS, because this has turned into, why are Christians bad kind of thing. The bottom line is Christians go out and convert people, and there's no biblical passage anywhere that says you have to go out, and if they don't convert, you're going to slay them. However, there are 4 particular Quranic verses that say exactly that. That is the difference between Islam and Christianity.
There are Bible verses that say that.
There are not Bible verses that say you're allowed to slay. What you do is you're not allowed to have them within your camp, which is a different thing. We're going to be back right after this break. We're going to resume our talk about ISIS. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Bertroche and Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. We are proud to work with military personnel and their families. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertroche, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere. Our licensed mental health therapists provide individual counseling to children, adolescents, and adults, including couples and marital counseling. Visit our website at bertrocheandassociates.com for more information, or call 515-334-9484. Our offices are located at 5525 Meredith Drive in Des Moines, just east of Skate North off Merle Hay Road. Isn't it time to talk to someone? Take care of yourself and your family. Contact Bertroche and Associates.
Welcome back, everybody. You know that when I talk seriously and solemnly into the microphone, is that my partner has said something over the break that has so outraged me.
Usually because it's true.
And made me so furious with him that I just want to hang up my suit jacket and quit the show. No, that's not true. That's not true at all. But we were talking about some stuff that we're not going to get. We don't have time. Even with 2 hours, we don't have time to talk about all this stuff.
Yeah, because we got a little bit off about, Christians suck and, Islamists need a break.
I don't remember making that argument.
Well, that's how I'm just paraphrasing.
Well, that's
so
how,
now we're going to get
that's
back
how you
to
interpreted it. That's your own problem.
Well,
right?
No, it isn't, because if that's what you say, that's...
I don't remember saying that.
No, not that exact phrase, but I can sum up.
I also remember saying that calling Christians terrorists when they do, or calling them Christian terrorists is unfair. I remember that making that argument.
Well, yeah. Well, so we're going to get back to ISIS a little bit. What? now you get it now. Rats.
That was accidental.
I hope people can hear that. Yeah, It was perfect. We got a little noisemaker here. People know about that. One of the things that I want to know is, how exactly do you fight this? How do you fight ISIS? Or do you fight ISIS? Do you let them just take over that area and collapse under their own weight, right? Or what do you do? I mean, the bottom line is we started out with 120 advisors, then we went to 300 advisors. Now apparently we have 2,400 advisors over there. And I have people from the Iowa National Guard coming in wanting their evaluations so that they can deploy back over to Iraq. So do you think that's the right way to take it? I mean, I'm going to assume both of you voted for Obama. I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm assuming. But the bottom line is I think Obama in part has at least a decent strategy of droning everybody over there. Yeah. Do you agree with that strategy? And what would you do, Chrisjahn?
I think it's a good strategy so far. I think the problem is you've got a group in ISIS who admittedly are seeking essentially a genocide. I mean, They represent Sunni Islam. They believe that Shias are apostates, and they are primarily in Iraq right now, which is largely Shia. They're closing in on a population of people who they would be very happy to just wipe off the face of the map. If we send ground troops in, we are going to give them a propaganda win, at least to begin with. We're going to be risking getting bogged down and serving their propaganda purposes. There is certainly the chance that we could succeed and crush that propaganda machine as well, but it's risky. I think at this point, it seems like the best idea to continue with what we've been doing. Drone them, prevent them from growing further. This idea of containment that the rabbi was talking about when he was still here. I think that's the best strategy for now, but I think to get firmly committed to that as the only strategy would be problematic.
Well, what do you think, there, Lefty?
I don't know. I mean, I would firmly oppose escalation. From what we're doing, I mean, I sort of oppose what we're doing right now, just on principle. But I don't know, man. I mean, I think this is the problem. If you treat them like a terrorist organization, we know sort of how to do that. We were able to do that a little bit successfully in 2005 to 2007, a little bit. If you treat them like a state, we kind of don't. Like the rabbi said, I mean, I feel like we sort of still know how to fight states, but not really. Not with everybody as economically interdependent as they are now, and we can't contain. We can't. It's fairly obvious that we can't contain them indefinitely. Now
we've been fighting a little bit of a proxy war over there. We're using the Kurdish Peshmerga. We've been trying to train Turkish troops. Apparently, we've been giving some weapons over there. One of the things that I've read several times that I don't want to believe it, but I'm going to have to believe it. Apparently, we have helped train some of these people that are now fighting against us in Turkey. I've read that more than one place, and I don't have any confirmation of that. I don't have a way to confirm it. So, do you think we ought to continue on with doing this war by proxy as we've been doing, or do you think we really need to get boots on the ground?
Boots on the ground is just a disaster. It's a disaster waiting to happen. It was a disaster in Iraq. It'll be a disaster again.
What do you think, Chrisjahn?
My problem with it is it's really lose-lose. Every time when we send troops into that region, what we do is provide the basis for the next insurgency. I mean, every time we go over there, we tick off another group of people, we radicalize another group of people, and even if we're going over there with the intention of defending Baghdad and defending the Shia community in Iraq from the Sunni radicals and ISIS and ISIL coming in from the north, if we go there with the best of intentions, we're still going to be portrayed as the big bad bully coming in there fighting a holy war against Islam, which is exactly what the propaganda machine of ISIL is espousing to the community at large. There is that's what America's doing. So even if we do go in there, even if we succeed, if we go in there and we wipe out ISIL, we still are providing the bedding in which the next generation of radicals are going to grow.
And here's the thought that just occurred to me. I had this thought earlier in the day. I was going to bring it up, but you just reminded me of it. If we were to compare, and I don't like making this comparison, but I'm hopefully doing it in a responsible way. If you guys get offended or whatever, be sure to let me know. But we have seen super expansionist regimes in modern history since World War I only a few times. We've seen them in Nazi Germany. We've seen it Stalin's Russia. Stalin's USSR was expansionist, and certainly Vietnam was expansionist to a certain degree with respect to at least taking over the entire country as a communist state. We haven't seen very many. And now we have ISIS that is seeking to gain more territory for whatever kind of organization it wants to call itself. what we saw when we defeated Nazi Germany is that we didn't wipe out Nazism. We certainly didn't wipe out the tenets of National Socialism to the extent that we still have neo-Nazis, we still have skinheads, we still have folks that are comfortable espousing that ideology, but we broke the back of the political will and the political machinery that supported it. Mm-hmm. So to such a degree that there was no state for Nazism to operate in, and there will never be, hopefully, another state that will prop up Nazism. In this region, what the central difficulty, it seems to me, is that we don't seem to have the political will to completely turn away from what ISIS is doing in the region. If we did, we would have a coalition that made a difference. We would have Jordan being able to do more. Well, Jordan's actually a smaller play. We'd have Saudi Arabia doing more than they're doing. We would have Egypt doing more than bombing Libya now. We would, if there was real political will in the region, we'd have Israel taking more of a hand. Israel's got the next biggest army, and they're content to let us do the fighting for them. All of these countries. This isn't a bash anybody in particular. All these countries. There's no political will to just say, hey, look, your fascist whatever aims are. We're going to break that political back. Yeah.
Now that is an excellent point. I'm going to address that right when we get back. And what I'm hearing you say is, why do we need to be the leaders over there? Why do we need American leadership?
Not necessarily, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we'll be back right after this break. Want to thank all of our sponsors: Petrosian Associates, Labinas Law Firm, Halo Capital, Des Moines Interest Rates, Des Moines Anesthesia PC at 515-574-6442. They do anesthesia and pain management. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and check us out at docandlefty.com. We'll be back right after this break. Also want to thank Chrisjahn Beck for being on. Forgot about him. Imagine that. Be back right after this break.
Petrosian Associates, how can I help you?
Petrosian Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Petrosh, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Hey, folks. Welcome back for the last 10 minutes.
Of this marathon session.
Everybody at the table, I think, understood what I said at the end of the last segment. Doc, I didn't hear a lot of argument from your side over there.
Well, this is, I'm going to tell you, Obama has been actually good in some ways for American foreign policy. Now, you won't hear that very often from a righty, but let me explain. What he has effectively done is taken us from any kind of leadership role and has made the world understand that when you get a president like President Obama, you really can't count on Americans. Now, people may disagree with that statement, but foreign policy analysts will not. The bottom line is Obama has stepped back and said, listen, this is a local issue. You guys can figure it out for yourselves. That's the approach he has taken over and over and over. He took that approach with the Arab Spring when there was a rebellion fomenting over in Iran. He took that approach with Egypt, Libya, the entire thing. And in fact, he didn't want to get involved in Libya, except the entirety of our EU backers went, oh, hold on. We supported you over in Iran or over in Iraq and Afghanistan. You owe us. What has happened, and what this shows quite clearly, is there is a need for leadership. And that need, for a while after the Cold War ended, fell on the Americans. And we're great at sitting around and making money and not really getting involved in a lot of stuff. Rabbi Kaufman hit it right on the head. Unless it affects our pocketbook, we really don't care. So who stepped into that vacuum? The Russians. The Russians are taking the lead on a lot of things. The problem is they've made a lot of enemies in the Middle East. I mean, they're supporting Syria, for crying out loud. We don't support Syria. So what's happening now is we've pulled out, and these other countries simply don't have, one, the military capabilities to keep a group like this under control, because this group is very well led. And in fact, they've captured an air base and have planes. All right. As soon as these guys figure out how to fly them and shoot them, they're going to be up in the air. And the second thing is, when you're the wealthiest, most powerful nation on the face of the planet, and not by a little bit, by a lot, people automatically look to you for leadership. And the bottom line is we're saying this essentially is a local issue. This is horrible. We're going to support our allies. We're going to do the bare minimum necessary. But really, it's not our fight. I mean, that's a signal that's been sent. Part of the thing is, I can't remember if I talked about this last week or not, but the mere suggestion that we're going to arm the Ukrainians got Putin to the table. He was trying to avoid that entire Minsk II meeting and the entire thing. And we started talking about arming the Ukrainians, and suddenly he shows up, right? That's the effect we have. And the problem is when you have that kind of power, with great power comes great responsibility. I keep forgetting who says that. You remember, Blake?
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. There you go. So Spider-Man says that, but it's absolutely true. So part of the problem what we have over there is, as much as we would like to be able to turn around and go, geez, we can't get involved, the bottom line is if we don't get involved, this is not going to stop. And that's my opinion. Chrisjahn has something to say about that, because I think he just likes to be argumentative.
So I fundamentally disagree with your characterization of the role that the Obama administration has played, and the argument about our stature on the world stage being affected some way. But I think that's something that takes a lot more than 5 minutes to address. I would say, for one thing, it is a position of leadership to say we can't do this alone. It is a position of leadership to say, look, we've got the biggest military and we have a huge budget. We're the wealthiest nation in the world. Well, arguably now, but we're not. But it's not infinite. It's not unlimited. We can't be constantly patrolling our economic interests in the Middle East and trying to maintain peace in some regions and trying to maintain relations with some people while simultaneously fighting the wars of everybody. At some point, it is taking a role of leadership to say, we've got to get some help here or nothing is going to get done. Because continuing to just mortgage away the future with war after war after war that we can't pay for is no more leadership than Obama saying we've got to get some help here. This has to be something that the world tackles. When you have an expansionist ideology bent on bringing on the apocalypse, which, keep in mind, is what ISIL's doing. When you have that mentality, you can't fight that with just one nation. But that expansionist mentality encompasses the entirety of the Middle East, and it will spread to North Africa like it's already beginning to, and it will spread into Eastern and Southeastern Europe. That cannot be the responsibility of the United States alone. And I think to portray it as if it's a failure of leadership, to step back, to a certain extent I agree that Obama's concerned with his legacy. And I don't think he wants to be seen as starting more wars in the Middle East when he's banking part of his legacy being on ending some of them. I think you're onto something in that regard. Mm-hmm. But that aside, we've got to get some help. And we've got to get some help from some of the people who are interested in the region, Israel being one of them, although I don't think it'll be hard to get them to the table. If ISIL gets anywhere near Jerusalem, watch how quickly they come to the table.
Yeah.
I just think it's an oversimplification to look at this and say that the rest of the world is going to get involved because they realize that the president isn't taking a role of leadership. I think that's unfair.
Well, and you're right. We got 2 minutes left, so I'm really not going to rebut that. But you and I do disagree about that. Mm-hmm. But I do agree with your position that, people, we can't continue to police the world. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to be like the Eye of Sauron, and that is we're going to have to focus on what we're going to do. And that's part of the president's job, is to be able to focus where we're going to be. And the problem is there's so much going on in the world currently that we're not able to focus on one thing and get it done. One of the things that I know is we used to have the 6th Naval Fleet used to be in the Mediterranean. We used to have 2 carriers there and the entire support staff. We're now down to a couple of missile cruisers and their support staff. So there's no way if ISIS got a hold of any significant technology or got a hold of any of the military assets that Libya has that floats on the sea, we're not going to be able to defend the Mediterranean. So you're right. I think you and I agree. These people are going to have to step up and help. Mm-hmm. But I do think America could take a bigger leadership role. I'm going to let Lefty have the last word, and then we're going to sign off.
The last word that I have on all of this stuff is that when if you're talking about what President Obama has done or focused on or whatever, it makes it very difficult for any president, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, to try and focus on something that's in America's interest, like the pivot to Asia, reestablishing ties with India, doing all the different kinds of economic things that he's tried to do here at home, when you have another political party that is bent on his political and personal destruction, that is willing to say things like, you cannot, or you must both put military assets to fight Russia, ISIS, and whoever else pops up that we don't know about, and if you don't, you failed. And that's a lot of what's happening.
Right. That's the final word. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We want to thank all our sponsors, Petrosian Associates, Labinas Law Firm, Halo Capital, Des Moines Anesthesia. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Look us up on docandlefty.com. We're going to have a couple of blogs coming out, hopefully soon. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Hi, I'm Representative Tom Shaw, and I love these guys. Both of them.
Love these guys. Get over here. Love both of them.